Welcome to Subject to Blackout. My name is Timo, and with me, as always, is Mike from the Name Taken podcast. Mike, how you been?
All right, Tim. How are you?
I have been good. This past week, we decided to change things up. You very generously gifted me gifted us rather, a subscription to the Criterion Channel, and we decided to put that to use. So, of course, we watched Armageddon. No, wait. We watched Black Orpheus. Mike, what were your thoughts on Black Orpheus?
I thought it was good. I'm glad that we jumped into the Criterion Collection because I felt like after we watched Waterworld, we haven't really been able to capture that same cinematic quality. The mise en scène of Waterworld hasn't really been replicated in anything else that we've watched.
Was there mise en scène in Waterworld? Or was there just water?
Fate of the Furious came close.
Yeah, you're right. That and Rush Hour 2.
Rush Hour, yes.
No, I appreciate your opinion. Boy, did I hate this movie.
You hated it? All right.
I really, I think part of it was that I
think it's art.
Whoa, it's certainly art.
It's art.
But also, if you recut this movie in the year of our Lord 2020, it is 38 minutes long.
Okay, here. Let's do this because it'll be entertaining. So why don't you walk everybody through the plot of this movie, and I will correct you when you're a dick.
Oh, all right.
You're already wrong. So it's gonna be great. Okay.
Spoilers.
Yep.
So Jackie Chan. No. Spoilers ahead. If you want to watch this movie, it is every single second of an hour and 47 minutes.
So it's on the Criterion Collection.
It is.
Brazilian movie, early 60s.
Very influential in its bossa nova.
Dawn of bossa nova music. Yeah. Jobim did the soundtrack.
There's a lot of things to like in this. I think the costuming. Let's go over positives before we go see my scene. So what I didn't like was the movie. What I did like, I thought the cinematography was pretty good. Nothing extraordinary, but like some pretty creative shots from time to time. Some tracking shots. I thought the costuming was obviously fantastic. I think that, like, no matter what you think about the movie, I think the costumes in this are clearly some of the best, most vivid, like, realizations of what they're trying to do with this story, and really express that fantastically through the costumes and the pageantry. Music, very good. Singing, excellent. And I think there's some really fun, cute parts, and that's pretty much it. So,
I would like to point out one thing, and I'm pretty sure I understand why you don't like this movie. So, like, everyone, this is, of all the movies we have watched so far, oddly enough, Black Orpheus, our first all-black cast. Isn't that...
This is not the first movie I've disliked. I also hated The Phantom. And that movie was about a white savior. So, yeah, fuck that movie too. No,
I'm just asking questions. You never said you weren't racist. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
I probably am. I'd like to think that I'm not, but so let's start off at the beginning. So the beginning of this film opens up with, okay, you're going to have to help me because my Portuguese is lacking and I can't read the lead female's name for the life of me. How do you pronounce that?
Oh, I don't do anybody's names in this movie.
All right.
I just like call everybody like...
Let's call her Persephone.
Astrid Gilberto. Just do other Brazilians that we know.
So...
Shakira.
João Virginia. I know lots of Brazilians. Rich Arlison. This movie opens up with the lead male character, Orpheus. Or Orfeu, whatever his name is in Portuguese. He is a trolley conductor, and he gets paid, and him and his girlfriend decide.
And first of all, sidebar, she's a bitch.
They make that
the movie
clear.
establishes she's a bitch.
Yeah. Okay. They make that clear very early on. His bitchy girlfriend who he wants to marry, despite the fact that it seems like he doesn't like her instantly. They decide that they are going to get married, but for some reason, even though it was just payday, Orpheus is like, I think he's just trying to dodge the marriage proposal. They decide to get married. So they're going to head down to, the city hall or whatever to go get a marriage license. And at the same time arrives this girl from out of town. And she claims that she's being chased by a man who's trying to kill her.
Right.
And then we just kind of leave that plot. And then the next scene we go to the city hall where we're getting the marriage license, and the bitchy girlfriend decides that she is going to pay for the ring, and there's just like a scene.
I think you're underselling that. Like, this is that classic, like, really saturated Technicolor.
Yes, that's beautiful too.
And everybody's hot. So like, you're just looking at like hot people dressed like beautifully and flamboyantly in these like bright, vivid colors.
Mm-hmm. But so the clerk at the city hall refers to the Orpheus myth.
Yeah.
And mentions in the myth the Greek woman's name. It's like, oh, that must be your name. And the bitchy girlfriend gets all jealous. Even though there's nothing to get jealous over, it's just a reference to Greek mythology, which is actually what the story is about. It's a retelling of that mythology. It's a little on the nose, but it's fair enough.
Sidebar: you studied like classics. This is like your vibe.
So while I did get a minor degree in classics,
you got a major degree in being a dick. Being a racist, hates this movie asshole.
I don't.
And a minor in classics.
I really don't like the movie. I'm not gonna walk it back because you're calling me a racist. There are lots of things that I liked about the movie. None of it were the fact that the people were black. All of it was that it was boring. It was boring as fuck. And this would have made a really tight 45 minutes. But yeah, so they end up getting a wedding ring and getting the marriage license, I guess. I don't fucking know. I wasn't paying attention. And I don't think the movie frankly cared either, because there were lots of things that the movie just kind of drops when it's just not important anymore.
Tim, I'm sorry it had subtitles instead of cars in space.
I wish there were more subtitles. No one talks for 20 minutes at a time. It's children dancing on the top of a mountain for 20 straight minutes. Yes, it is certainly art house, and if that's art house,
it's like cinema verite inspired. It's like true to life stuff.
I don't go to movies to watch true to life. Life is boring. I want to watch a movie because they cut out all the boring parts. That's what I want. Anywho,
go ahead.
Then Orpheus meets this girl who has the same name as the Greek character that Orpheus fell in love with.
Eurydice.
Eurydice. Okay, we'll go with Eurydice.
Eurydice.
So she is coincidentally next door to his home because her cousin lives next door, and she overhears him singing, and the children in the neighborhood in the favela believe that Orpheus, along with tying into the Greek myth, when he sings, he is able to let the sun rise, or he allows the sun to rise. He coerces it. And so he's this very talented singer.
He's
and
hot. Kind of a scoundrel.
He is hot.
Sleeps around. Known to sleep around.
Did you know that actor was not an actor before this movie? Yeah, he was just a soccer player who the director was like, you're attractive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a very attractive man, and whoever's singing, whether it's him or someone else, very, very good singer, and the music is fantastic. But yeah, so she kind of becomes entranced with him. He kind of becomes entranced with her. Yada, yada, yada.
Oh my God. There's just like these gorgeous shots on top of these like mountains and these favelas.
Yes.
Looking
I
down
will
at
not
Rio
argue with that.
before the Christ the Redeemer even goes up. So it's not even
No,
like,
it's in the background. No.
Is it?
It's in the background of a couple shots. Because it's just not a thing, because it was built in like the 30s. But you can early on see Christ the Redeemer. So who watched the movie and who didn't, Michael? Who watched the movie?
Oh, I was focused on
and who didn't.
I was focused on the people in the foreground because I'm not racist.
I was looking around at the people in the background because I was bored. Yeah. So things happen. I don't know. They're
preparing for carnival.
They are preparing for carnival.
So everyone's like putting on like costumes and like.
They put on costumes way later though. They're like practicing dancing and stuff.
Yeah.
And the bitchy girlfriend is getting jealous of the fact that Orpheus keeps just straight up constantly avoiding her.
Yeah.
And hanging out with this girl.
Yeah. And she's like, yo, I'm gonna kill that bitch.
Yeah. And also the girl is being stalked by a creepy guy in a very weird but kind of cool skeleton costume.
Yeah. It's all stylized. It's art.
Yeah. I really like the costuming in this film and the cinematography. Yeah. It's just the fact that 45 minutes worth of stuff happens over an hour and 47 minutes.
An hour of art.
I could have used a little less art.
I just want you to know too that like as we dig deeper into the Criterion Collection, it is all going to be like this. It is not. There's not just going to be like a bunch of Armageddons. It's going to be like this.
There could be more Armageddons though. We don't know until we explore. Listen. So before we continue on with my horrific plot summary of this movie that I was bored by and didn't care about.
Right.
I would just like to say that in the past, I've heard Philistines say things such as, like, I won't watch a movie that's in black and white. I've heard people say this. And I've always thought,
I'll only watch a movie that's in white.
No, goddammit! But when I hear someone say a stupid thing like that, I think, oh man, that's stupid. How could you ever think it? And then when people are like, oh, I'm not into art films, it's like, well, you got to give them a chance. But like this movie for me was like, oh, if this is your first art film, like, yeah, you're never doing that shit again. Like if you get your toes like dipped into the water and you start to wade out into in the deeper seas of art films. No, this is throwing you in the middle of the fucking Pacific Ocean. You're in the Mariana Trench with this one, and I was no. What
would you offer as like, and we can do this next, but what would you offer as
dipping your toe
art film in the Criterion Collection?
Well, I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of the Criterion Collection, so I could not say that.
I mean, we could do like a Fellini. Can you do like?
Yeah, I've watched Fellini movies.
Fellini? All right.
And they're okay. Again, like that's not my jam. I am someone who likes plot oriented movies and character development, and I love it when on top of that there's beautiful cinematography. Like I'm all about that stuff. But a movie like, I have not seen the 1970s Suspiria, I believe it's in it, but like that to me, I've heard tell that is a very like visually arresting movie, but that's like there's like almost no plot. Like there's stuff to make it a movie, but like the whole thing is just like visuals and interpretation. And
yeah, see, I dig that. You do not dig that.
No, I've never seen Suspiria, but like that to me is not what I'm looking for in a movie. I would
Right.
much rather, like, I very much enjoy Citizen Kane. I very much enjoy Casablanca. Those are not art house films.
Yeah. Those are
They are,
like universally considered the greatest movies of all time.
but like they're older films that that a lot of people think, oh, they're old, so they're not very good, but they are, because their plots are well manicured little pieces of jewelry that are, everything is in its right place, and I
Who doesn't
appreciate that.
think Citizen Kane is a good movie? Name names. Go.
People who haven't watched it.
Hmm.
Like I like my brother has not seen Citizen Kane because he thinks it's going to be boring.
Orson Welles doesn't even sing one time.
Is that true?
He doesn't even sing one time in Citizen Kane. He doesn't even have a guitar.
To be honest, I don't think this.
He just has like a newspaper. Fuck that guy.
Listen, you're very much a musician, and you appreciate that. I don't need that from my movie. I don't need Orson Welles revolutionizing bossa nova music in the background of Citizen Kane.
That sounds awesome. Bossa Nova Citizen Kane? Are you serious?
Let's make a movie, Mike.
Yeah. Would it be instead of a sled? Christ the Redeemer.
Which they push down a mountain. They just push over Christ the Redeemer and then slide that down a mountain. On his deathbed, Christ the Redeemer.
No, don't know what that means.
What could it mean, guys? I think it means a clit.
Nope.
Yeah, so that's a script that we got to start working on. Yeah, no, I to me, I enjoy movies that are obviously visually beautiful. It's a visual medium, but I like the like watchmaker aspect of a really intricate plot,
Sure.
of really well thought out setups, payoffs, that sort of thing. So this movie being mostly a vibe movie,
it's a vibe. You're right. It's a vibe.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a vibe movie. It's definitely like feel Brazil, and you can feel Rio in that movie.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's just this like thin artifice of like, hey, we're doing a Greek myth on top, and I find that in 2021, I don't think that there's enough of that to structure this movie at this length for my taste, and that's just how I like film.
Well, I think,
but you think differently.
Stupid. Yeah, I think it's a great movie. I mean, it's a contemporary retelling of a Greek myth, so it follows the Greek myth like pretty closely. It comments on and subverts the Greek myth by having like an all-black cast in the 1960s in particular, knowing that it would be this international film. You have these really interesting kind of like lives happening in these favelas while you have this bossa nova music, which at that point was kind of associated more with like these upper class kind of beach areas in Brazil. So placing
like
it in
Ipanema,
these
Copacabana,
right? Yeah. Placing it in these lower class enclaves was kind of subversive for its moment, especially racializing the music in the way that they were. But I mean, crashing those types of things into a Greek classic, like into a classic tragedy, I thought was really clever, and it also speaks to a larger tradition of that in film that includes people like Orson Welles, who were casting like all black versions of Macbeth and other Shakespeare plays in the 1930s and doing teleplay versions of those things as well. So it's kind of placed in a larger tradition of film, and also its historical context, its moment in the 60s is incredibly poignant. So we have all that going on, but at the same time, when you're watching the movie, the colors and the interactions I think are very compelling. I think juxtaposing what were probably very real communities, wearing real costumes for Carnival and like developing these like community dances and music is like very cool. So there's a lot of stuff going on, I think. So I think one of the things that you don't like is the plot. But again, like it's a Greek tragedy. The
It's
plot
not
follows
even
a
the
Greek tragedy.
plot. Yeah, it's not even the plot that I have a problem with. It's just pacing. And again, the reason I bring up Casablanca and the reason I bring up
Citizen Kane.
Citizen Kane is not because like, oh, those are universally good movies. They're earlier examples of what we would call older films,
Right.
where the pacing is very modern. But I find when you look back at a lot of movies from 20, 30, 40 years ago, and beyond, there's a modern pacing that a lot of those movies are missing. Um, and I usually, the further you go back, the worse it gets. But then there's these outliers. But I mean, you look. I recently have been rewatching 30 Rock, which
Sure.
came out like 15 years ago.
Is that streaming?
And
Where are you streaming that?
Netflix.
Yeah, it's on. It's on. It was off. It was off Netflix for a while. It's back on Netflix.
It's on. Yeah.
All right, cool.
And I just started rewatching it because my buddy was talking about it a couple months ago, and I was like, I just don't have like background TV right now, so maybe I'll just like restart 30 Rock. And those first couple seasons, the pacing in that show is fucking glacial, but like it felt so snappy at the time.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's just the progress of it. So like when I see a movie like Black Orpheus, where the pacing, and you have to admit this, whether you think it's a feature or or a fault, is glacial. And that's fine. That obviously you like that in this particular setting. I found it detracted from my experience because while they were, walking around one of the neighborhoods in like a minute and a half long unbroken shot and no one's talking and no plot points are happening,
love it.
You're enjoying it. I'm going like, all right, this is nice. Let's get to the next thing. And I think in the second half of the movie, it picks up. I think when Orpheus descends into Hades or what would have you,
right,
when he goes into that house, I think that is starting to that's like the pace that I wish the first half of this movie was at. But then again, there's like scenes at the Carnival where they're dancing around and like plot points will happen and then there'll be like a minute and a half or 2 minutes of just dancing and then another plot, and it's like, I get it. It's very much like, this is how it feels. This is, like you called it, cinema verite. This is how being there would feel. But that's not how I wanted this to go. I needed it to be a little bit peppier, a little bit faster. Like, for me, this movie there's a lot to like. Again, visually beautiful in both costuming, the Technicolor film, the cast, cinematography, all of the visuals I really loved. It was just the pacing that really fucking killed it for me.
All right. Whatever.
It's a good point that you bring up. Whatever.
You suck. So, like, what about like a Wong Kar-wai? What if we did like a Wong Kar-wai? Could you tolerate that? Because that's just like visual fuck and then kind of plot.
Maybe, like, if you're, I mean, I don't know. I would have to try it before I could say yay or nay. I don't think I would mind a movie. So, like, 2001 is pretty glacial as well. I enjoyed 2001 quite a bit. But that's a pretty glacial movie at times, especially in the last like third of that movie.
And the beginning.
But I can kind of put up with it because as opposed to a vibe, I feel like that's asking you to just observe and reflect on what's being shown in front of you.
Right.
Whereas while similarly extended sequences were happening in Black Orpheus, I felt like, again, it was just going for like, hey, this is kind of how it feels. And once I kind of like get it, I just kind of wanted to skip ahead. And maybe that makes me a bad film watcher. And you would obviously say yes. And that's fair.
Nodding my head. Yeah, no one can see me.
It's not a visual medium, this podcast. But for me, it just didn't work. And I wanted it to work. I wasn't also in the greatest headspace to watch the movie. I watched it last night after being pretty tired. I've been kind of doing a lot of shit, been all over the place this week. So I kind of watched it after I probably would have gone to bed if I didn't have to watch it. So I wasn't in the best headspace, but I don't think that really would have changed my opinion terribly much if I was more up for watching it. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, I didn't love of this particular film. There were aspects that I really liked, but is there anything else that you think I'm missing that you think is such a fantastic movie? With like, what did you enjoy about it?
I mean, I feel like I've talked about a lot of that already, but I think the making that movie with its historical context is compelling. I think juxtaposing this like 1960s urban Brazilian cinema verite with this like ancient Greek story, I think is very cool. All the I like the slow pacing. Love the colors. The costumes are gorgeous. Some of the acting isn't perfect. That's okay because it's kind of arty, so it's supposed to be a little bit rough around the edges. This is like one of my top movies. I think it's beautiful. I think it's great. I think you're stupid for not liking it. You're wrong.
Yeah.
You're wrong.
I've been wrong before. No, you're wrong again.
You don't know what you're talking about.
That might be true, Michael. But God damn it, I'm talking, and that's all that matters in this world. As long as you're creating that content, it doesn't fucking matter if you're right or wrong.
And I'm sharing those feelings with other people.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wished I liked it, but I'm not gonna lie and say I thought it was good. I didn't like it. Here's a question for you.
Okay.
Red Letter Media often will watch films and they'll review them and they'll say, would you recommend this? And even sometimes when they like films, they will say, I don't think this is good for the general audience, but if you're into, if you really enjoy cinematography or blah, 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 if you really enjoy this aspect of filmmaking,
sure, this
is a movie for you, but it's not a movie for general audiences. Would you agree that this is not a movie for general audiences?
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I don't think most people would enjoy this movie. I would be hard pressed to find someone who doesn't think it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. It is beautiful. The visual aspects of this movie are superb. But yeah, it's definitely capturing a moment in time in Rio de Janeiro that has only ever since been captured by Fast and the Furious 5. And I think those two movies are basically like, it's those two and Brazil, and you could make a trilogy out of those.
We should just start slamming together trilogies.
Oh man, that could be a lot of fun. Just jam 3 movies that kind of have a thread together and just say like, no, this is a sequel.
I mean, I feel like we've sort of reached the end of the line with Black Orpheus. Like ultimately, it's this.
We've brought the trolley into the station, if you will.
We have. It's a beautiful and racially sensitive retelling of the Greek legend of Orpheus that was too sophisticated for Tim to understand.
I never finished my thought. I studied the classics, and I thought all of the stories were boring. What I actually liked about classics history was architecture and like the interpersonal like workings of how ancient Greek and ancient Rome worked.
Sure,
I liked
they're all white.
What I enjoyed was the culture of the time and how different and similar. Like you could have a city of literally millions of people in 32 AD, and it just kind of worked, and they didn't have the plague every couple of years like fucking London did 1500 years later.
Yeah. Whoops.
So what were the Romans doing right that we lost to time? I mean, we lost concrete for literally millennia. The Romans had concrete, and then no one wrote it down, and we just forgot how to make concrete. That is always what astounded me, is the success of both the Greek and Roman cultures, and then the precipitous downfall afterwards. So all of the stories and the poetry, and Zeus raped this person while pretending to be a deer, like that shit was always like, no, that I like the art, the culture, and the structure of their societies always interest me. So yes, maybe I am the Philistine for not appreciating this Bossa Nova movie.
Yes, maybe.
But I think it's up to the listener to take a look at this on the Criterion Channel and make it up for yourself. It is visually arresting at times. And honestly, my two favorite costumes are Orpheus's Carnival costume.
Yep.
And
Gladiator.
Yeah, like sexy gladiator though.
Gladiator, yeah, exactly.
Like
that's not stopping weapons.
And
they're gonna slice right through that costume.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's basically made out of like gold ribbon.
Yeah, he's wearing like pretty much like as much as they wore in 300.
Oh, and they like it's a little bit more. And they like ADR'd in like his clearly cloth like fake metal panels on his like skirt thing. They like ADR'd in like metal clinking sometimes, and it's like, guys, I can see it moving. Like it's not metal. Like, why did you do that? But no, I thought that was one of my favorites, and my other favorite was the costume for Death. The skeleton costume. That was super like 60s, like whoa, like there's just like weird angles instead of bones and stuff. That was cool. But yeah, visually arresting movie. If you don't mind a movie that takes its time to feel the vibe, maybe this is a movie for you. But it gets a thumbs down from me and a thumbs up from Mike. So, all right, with that, let's take a quick little break, and we'll be right back. This week on Subject to Blackout. As some of you may have noticed, we tried something a bit new this week when we released our first episode of Subject to Blowout, our Northwestern football podcast. The plan is to have Subject to Blowout as a weekly feature here on Subject to Blackout throughout the entire Northwestern football season. While Mike and I are going to continue to release our pop culture podcast every Monday, we're going to shake things up again this week when we release a special soccer podcast. On that episode, 3 friends of mine who also follow Premier League teams join me on a call to discuss our team's early season efforts, as well as our thoughts on the transfer window that just closed. Unlike the Northwestern podcast, this won't be a regular feature, but every once in a while, when I need to talk soccer, this will be the place to do it. So join me for that podcast, and then next week join Mike and me for our regularly scheduled program. All right, Mike, that was Black Orpheus. We were talking earlier about documentaries, and one of the things that I watched this past week was a documentary about some happy little trees. It was the Bob Ross documentary on Netflix. Have you partaken?
I haven't. It seemed the title was so clickbaity. I felt like immediately resentful. So I haven't looked at it.
I kind of felt the same way, and then I kept hearing things that like, it's pretty decent. And yeah, spoiler for anyone, just skip ahead about a minute because this is gonna be real fast. Basically, Bob Ross had his naming rights stolen after his death. It wasn't stolen outright, but it was basically coerced away from him to people who were not his son, who he wanted his naming rights to go to. And the people who have Bob Ross's naming rights continue to make gobs of money off of them to this day, while they sue everyone else who's ever been associated with Bob Ross. So,
oh my gosh,
it's a little disappointing.
Free Bob Ross.
Yeah, it's a little disappointing to hear, but not terribly surprising. It's a story that in our society is kind of frequently repeated, whether it's comic book artists having their creations stolen from underneath them and not given fair compensation, or artists like it was just the other day, Basquiat. Is it Basquiat, the artist? Jean-Philippe Basquiat, right?
Yeah. What what happened?
He Beyonce and Jay-Z, I believe it was for Tiffany's, were doing an advertisement, and in the background, in a previously unknown Basquiat painting was in the background. And they're like, and people got all upset because it's like, well, why are you keeping this Basquiat that nobody knew about behind closed doors and not telling anybody except for using it in advertisement? So just another exploitation of artists post-mortem. It's not a terribly arresting documentary. It's not constantly shocking like Tiger King was, or, upsetting like
Tiger King was.
Tiger King was never really upsetting to me because there were no good guys in that movie. There were just different levels of bad people. But no, other documentaries where you just see people being exploited or whatever. It's not shocking or eye-opening. It's just pretty much a sad story about a guy that everybody seemed to like and was genuinely a good guy, and after his death people exploited that fact. So a little bit of a bummer, but if you're looking for something to watch, you could do far worse. You could watch Black Orpheus.
Oh god. I feel like I don't.
That's not fair. That's not fair.
I don't need to suffer through that documentary. I feel like that was enough.
Yeah, you don't have to watch it.
Well,
no.
I won't.
That's pretty much it. He liked Happy. He was as good as you think he was, and also he liked to maybe sleep around a little bit. Other than that, you're fine.
He cheated on his wife? What do you think his
Probably. I mean, he had two. He technically had 3 wives, but he really had 2 wives.
Concurrently, or
no? He had a first wife. He had a kid, and then they divorced.
Had just multiple families.
But his wife died shortly before he died, like a couple years.
Sure.
And then later in life, he married another woman, and the documentary specifically says he married that woman in order to successfully try to negotiate a way to keep his estate from going to these people who eventually got access to it. So it was basically like a sham marriage, but he married a nurse who was taking care of him when he had cancer. So,
man, he was banging.
Yeah, he was allegedly banging the person who ended up taking all of his naming rights from his son, because she was super jealous and got mad when he stopped banging her.
What do you think he was into? Do they share?
Define what is he into?
Feet, painting feet.
I know. I think he was into vagina
What?
and titties. No, they don't get super into detail about it. They just say he probably had extramarital affairs. They say he's very flirtatious with women, but not in a cancel way.
Yeah.
In a you can get away with it because you're Bob Ross, and who doesn't want to fuck Bob Ross?
Well, I'm just kind of imagining his voice cadence. What?
The hair?
Yeah.
Was a perm. It was a lie.
Yeah, but what did you think it was?
His hair.
It was his hair. It was just permed.
I didn't think it was a perm.
It was the 70s. I believe it. Like Mike Brady.
They show him in the military with he apparently, according to his son, who's like the main interview of this whole thing, he was always about the hair, and they show him in like the 1950s with like the swoop over, and it's just like immaculate. He's a good looking dude. He was always a good looking dude.
Yeah.
But yeah, and he learned how to paint from some guy who was also on PBS before him, and yeah, he was very good at it. And he intentionally, the other little tidbit you learned, the last tidbit I'll mention, is that he intentionally like whispered because he wanted to be sensual, because he figured most of his viewers were women. So he was trying to be kind of sexual.
I mean, it is very sensual, I guess. Yeah. I don't know if it's sexy, but it's sensual.
The movie tries to frame it as though it's sexual by clipping different parts where he's saying like, just make love to the canvas.
Tap it. Just tap it.
Just
tap it.
Just caress it. Just the slightest touch.
Yes.
And then blow on the clit. What?
Just on the tip of the brush. Just the tip.
And they also kind of...
Tap it in.
I said I was done, but they also kind of hint that all the paint thinner, that he'd just go, beat the devil out of it.
Yeah.
They're like, that's probably what gave him Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's like, all
was
right,
odorless.
that's speculation. Yeah, that's speculation.
It was odorless paint thinner. He talked about it every fucking time.
Yeah, it was odorless, not
Cancerless?
carcinogenic. Yeah. So, I don't know. I thought it was well worth the hour 20, spin or whatever. But yeah, I pretty much summed it up. All right, Mike, that is what I watched this week. What have you been consuming? You were consuming Maine last weekend.
I was sick. What am I doing now? Finished up Avatar. I've been watching this quasi-reality show on Netflix where these two dumb bitches try and rehab this fucking motel in a beach resort in Canada, because apparently Canada is trying to have beach resorts.
Where?
I don't think it's even on an ocean. I think it's on a lake. And
Welcome to Thunder Bay, y'all.
Yeah, it's like ridiculous. And they'll do this thing where, I mean, everybody has like a really strong vocal fry, so it's like,
oh my god,
exactly the whole time. So that's what I've been watching. What color of beige do we want?
Do they vocal fry an A at some point?
No, but they'll vocal fry like a boots and stuff. I just don't know what to do about the boot this.
Guys, I think it's about time that we go to Tim Hortons.
So totally recommend it if you love a good vocal fry.
Big fan of the vocal fry. All right, well, I think that does it for this week. Black Orpheus was a rousing success. We actually disagreed on a movie for once.
Yeah, good.
And Mike's wrong and I'm right, so
Ooh, ugh. Tim's racist, I think.
I get the final edit with this pod, so I'm gonna look sterling.
I've said you're racist so many times, you're not gonna be able to get all of them.
It's just gonna be like, you're terrific. You're right. You just didn't like it because all of the main characters were happy little trees. It's always good to be the editor. All right, Mike. Well, I want to thank you again for joining me as always. And for those of you listening along, you can head over to subjectblackout.com where you can reach out to us, or you can find all of the links to our socials, including Instagram, Patreon, Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. You can also feel free to go on there and rate, review, and subscribe. And lastly, I want to let you know that you can find Mike on Instagram and Twitter at the Name Taken Podcast. Mike, thanks for joining me.
Good stuff, Tim.
Have a good one.